I get a lot of questions about the DCT transmission on my Honda Goldwing. If you're not familiar with what a DCT is, it stands for dual clutch transmission. And what that really means in layman's terms is it's an automatic transmission. So just like a car with an automatic transmission on a Honda Goldwing with the DCT option, the motorcycle takes care of shifting up and down through the gears. You can put the motorcycle in drive, take off, and never have to worry about shifting up or down through the gears unless you want to take more direct control over the transmission. So since I get a lot of questions on this subject, I thought I'd share some of my thoughts on the Goldwing DCT. We'll look at what the major differences are between it and a standard motorcycle, some of the other motorcycles that are available that also have this DCT, and some riding tips and pros and cons that I've discovered in my 1.5 year time riding on a motorcycle with an automatic transmission. Hey, my name's Kevin, and I release a weekly video here on MCrider focused on road skills or road strategy to help you become a better rider. Become a member of MCrider and get access to even more tools to help you stay sharp and develop your skills on two wheels. You know, by far the biggest difference between the Goldwing DCT and most other motorcycles is the lack of a manual clutch. Now, I phrase it manual clutch because it still has a clutch that controls the power to the rear wheel like any other motorcycle would. It's just that in the DCT, it's all controlled for you by the motorcycle. Now, I'll admit that even after 1.5 years of riding this motorcycle, I'll still reach out for that clutch handle on occasion. Old habits are hard to break, I guess, and I think it's even more the case for me since I still have other motorcycles in the shop that have a normal clutch on it. So when initially riding an automatic motorcycle, there's a feeling that you need to be doing something when you start out and when you come to a stop or you're approaching a corner that you would normally downshift for. You get kind of an uneasy feeling like you should be doing something. But in my case, that feeling went away pretty quick. And, you know, after that feeling goes away, what you're left with is a much more relaxing ride. You know, the human brain is only capable of doing so many things at once. And freeing up brain cycles from shifting does help create a more relaxed ride down the road. For me, this is what I was hoping for with the DCT, and it was one of the reasons why I went that direction. And for me, it makes the Honda Goldwing a perfect motorcycle and something that I really enjoyed. So in addition to the lack of clutch, the Goldwing with the DCT also has a neutral and a drive switch. When you're parking the motorcycle, you want to make sure you engage the parking brake because the motorcycle will roll freely without that parking brake on. So when you shut it down, especially on an incline, you want to make sure that parking brake's engaged. And it's got paddle shifters, so you can manually move up or down through the gears. Those are on the left-hand grip. I also installed a foot shifter on mine, so I can use that foot shifter, and I can click up and down through the gears just like you would on a normal motorcycle. And that's something my muscle memory was already accustomed to, so I went that option and had that put on the Goldwing when I got it. Honda started offering the DCT transmission in their motorcycle several years ago, so it's not a new technology, and they continue to add to it to more and more motorcycles in their lineup. In fact, the DCT has evolved over the years, and it's gotten better with each new release. Right now, you can purchase a Honda Goldwing, Africa Twin, or an NC750X with a DCT transmission. They've had older bikes that are now discontinued that they've had it in that particular model lineup as well. And Honda recently announced the Rebel 1100 that's coming out in 2021, and it will have a DCT option as well. So that's a cruiser. If you like cruisers, you can get a DCT in that. In the Goldwing, the DCT's selling really well, and it's hard to find exact numbers, but it looks like that about 2/3 of the Goldwings sold since it was introduced in 2018 have the DCT transmission in it. So outside of Honda, there are not as many options for an automatic transmission on a motorcycle unless you want an electric motorcycle. Like Harley-Davidson's got the Livewire, which is electric, and Zero is a producer of electric motorcycles. There are a few others out there as well. But the transmissions on those are functionally different than they don't have gears. They ride more like a scooter does. And riding an electric motorcycle, like I said, would be more like that scooter, that it doesn't shift up or down through the gear range, where a DCT transmission still has gears and it still shifts up and down through those gears. It's just the action of shifting is performed by the motorcycle. So since Honda leads the way in this, let's focus on the DCT transmission offered by Honda, and I'll share some tips that I've learned in riding it. So like I said, the DCT shifts up and down through the gears just like a standard bike does. It's just controlled by the motorcycle unless you choose to control the gearing and override the selected gear. So the motorcycle's got neutral, drive, and manual. Neutral does what you would think it would. It removes all power from the rear wheel. Drive puts the motorcycle in gear and starts the motorcycle moving as soon as you roll on the throttle. And it shifts up and down through the gears in a very smooth manner. In fact, after shifting to second gear, you have to really pay attention to feel the motorcycle shift up through the rest of the gears. It really is that smooth. And it'll continue shifting up and down through the gear range unless I choose to override the gear selection. So it comes with the paddle shifters, and in my case, I put the optional foot shifter in that will override for a certain period of time the particular gear selection. So like if I'm going down the highway and I want to pass somebody, I can click down a gear or two and the bike takes off. And sometime after that, a few seconds later, it will return back to automatic control. There's also a manual mode, which acts a little more like a standard transmission on a motorcycle. Manual selection allows you to shift up and down through the gear range using the paddle shifter, and it won't shift up unless I tell it to do so. So when you're starting out, the motorcycle won't shift up into second gear unless I shift it there with either the paddle shifters or the foot shifters, but it will always shift back down when you're coming to a stop. So if you approach a stop in fourth gear, it will shift back down through the gears, getting you into first by the stop. And that makes the motorcycle impossible to stall, as it always has the proper gear for the motorcycle to be in. So what are some tips in riding it? Riding a DCT transmission does change a few things about the way I ride. The MSF teaches that slow look, press, and roll technique, and I've got some videos that explain that if you don't know what that is. But when you're slowing down, you should be doing all your slowing, braking, and downshifting prior to the corner while the motorcycle is still in a straight line. However, on an automatic motorcycle with the DCT, the bike may choose to downshift mid-corner. And while it's not really a threat to the rider because the shifts are pretty smooth, it can be a little bit unsettling, especially when you're first getting used to the motorcycle. So I choose to eliminate this problem, and I often use the gear selection override to have the motorcycle in the gear that I want prior to the corner. That way, just like the MSF teaches, I can do all my slowing, have the motorcycle in gear that I want, and have everything settled before leaning into the corner. So what about slow speed control on the DCT? I get a lot of questions about that. When performing slow speed control exercises like U-turns or turns from a stop, the friction zone is a must-have skill to be proficient at those techniques. So on the DCT, you don't have direct control over the clutch, and in my opinion, this is the biggest drawback to these motorcycles. It can be overcome by dragging the rear brake and with smooth throttle control. The motorcycle will then put the clutch in the friction zone so the motorcycle handles it for you, but it's not the same as controlling it yourself. So when performing slow speed control on the Goldwing, what works best for me is using rain mode so that the throttle control is the most forgiving, putting the transmission in manual mode so that I know it won't shift up into second gear, and dragging the rear brake. So all the other techniques are the same. Turning your head, counterweighting, etc. All that stuff is exactly the same, and with practice you can get proficient in doing slow speed control on a DCT, but in my experience it's not as easy as a motorcycle with the clutch. But to me, these bikes are not made for riding in the cones. They're all about riding long distances, enjoying the ride, and still feeling pretty decent whenever you get there, and at that task they excel. So with what I know about DCT, would I buy another bike with that option? Well, without a doubt. It's a great option to have on a motorcycle, and it really makes the motorcycle enjoyable and relaxing to ride. Like all motorcycles, the Goldwing is strong at some things and weaker at others. And in my opinion, the motorcycle with the DCT is not as good in the cones or with tight, slow-speed maneuvers, but it is capable of doing anything that you need to out on the regular street riding, like making a U-turn within the 2-lane street or riding at a slow walking pace in traffic. That can all be accomplished on a motorcycle with the DCT. However, in my experience, it will never be as strong and as a skills competition bike or doing really tight control maneuvers as it would be in a motorcycle with the clutch. So for the cons, I would list slow speed, really technical skills, and the fact that the motorcycle will sometimes downshift mid-corner, but this can be overcome as discussed earlier in this video with some of the techniques I talked about earlier. So on the pro side, an automatic motorcycle is an absolute blast to ride. It's just the most relaxing bike I've ever had. And in my opinion, it's a safer motorcycle when all things are considered. Not having to worry about being in the proper gear allows a rider to focus more on what's happening around them and to focus on quick, safe braking or avoiding an obstacle when an emergency arises because there's one less thing to think about. I know a lot of viewers on MCrider have a DCT. I'd love for you to leave your comments below and tell us what you think about it, or even better yet, become a member where we'll be continuing this conversation on the forums, and you can get access to the forums and learn more about that at mcrider.com/member. Until next week, guys, it's Kevin with MCrider, and we'll see you on the road.